It started with a necklace. Not any necklace, but her necklace. The one her mother had promised would be passed down to her one day, the same day she whispered, "You'll understand when you're older." It was an heirloom, a filigree locket, with a diamond center, fragile and full of memory. And now it was missing. Claire Robbins stood frozen at the foot of the grand staircase inside her childhood home. Her mother's funeral had ended 3 days ago. She hadn't even unpacked her bags when she saw the glint on her sister's neck. "Is that?" Her voice cracked before the question finished. Vanessa turned in slow, deliberate fashion, one manicured, hand touching the gold resting against her collarbone like it belonged there. "Oh, this?" she said lightly. "Yeah. Mom gave it to me a few weeks before she passed. Said it was always meant for the older daughter." Claire blinked. "She never told me that." Vanessa's smile sharpened. "Well, maybe she knew you wouldn't. Take care of it. You're not exactly known for keeping things safe, Claire." That comment landed like a slap. Claire felt her ears ring. Their mother, Margaret Robbins, had always been meticulous. Fair to a fault. Her will hadn't been opened yet. It was scheduled for next week. But even without seeing it, Claire had believed the locket would be passed to her. Not because she was the younger daughter, but because of what it represented. Margaret used to wear it every Sunday morning when she read to Claire in the rose garden. It was their time, sacred and silent, a ritual that Vanessa had always refused to join. Claire had even helped pick the tiny sapphire embedded on the chain loop when it cracked one spring. But now the necklace lay on the chest of the one person who didn't deserve it. The reading of the will came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The dar kind of rain that felt personal, tapping on the windows like ghosts demanding to be let back in. Claire sat rigid in her seat, while Vanessa leaned comfortably against the long table, flanked by their father, stepmother Lorraine, and the family. Attorney Mr. Sims. Claire barely heard the introductions. Her eyes were locked on the mahogany box placed in front of them. Margaret's last words, pressed into paper and signature. Mr. Sims began. "To my daughter Vanessa Robbins, I leave the Lake House estate in Rhode Island and the contents therein." Claire's eyes snapped to her sister, who smirked but managed a faux surprised blink. Their mother had always said that house would go to whoever needed peace the most. Vanessa didn't need peace. She needed power. "To my daughter, Claire Robbins." Mr. Sims paused, the hesitation thick with implication. Claire braced herself. "I leave the private accounts in Trust B, the European art collection currently held in storage, and a personal letter to be read in private." Claire barely heard the rest. Her heart pounded. The trust accounts? The art collection? That couldn't be right. Vanessa shot her a look. It wasn't envy. It was calculation. Later that night, in the quiet of the old study, Claire opened the envelope. The letter was handwritten in her mother's looping cursive. "My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, then I am gone." I have no doubt Vanessa made a spectacle of herself at the will reading. The necklace, yes, the one she is wearing, was never meant to be hers. I gave it to her in a moment of weakness, because I knew she'd tear the house apart if she didn't. Leave with something in her hands. She believes inheritance is about possession. But you, Claire, you understand legacy. That locket has a compartment. You'll find a second key inside. Use it when you're ready. Trust yourself. Love always, Mom. Claire stared at the words. Her fingers trembled. A hidden key? That night, while Vanessa partied in the city with a group of influencers she barely knew, probably bragging about her new beach estate, Claire slipped into her sister's bedroom in the house. She found the locket left on the nightstand, tangled in a mess of jewelry and perfume bottles. Carefully, she opened it. The usual picture was there, an old black and white photo of Margaret holding Claire as a baby. But under it, thin as a needle, was a sliver of gold. She slid it out, a key, and etched into its surface, almost invisible, Studio B, Robin's gallery. Claire's blood ran cold. The gallery had been closed for nearly a decade, ever since their mother had retired. No one had set foot in Studio B since, no one but her. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside Claire's chest, something began to burn. She was done being the quiet one. She was done playing fair. And if Vanessa thought she'd won, she had no idea what was coming. Claire hadn't driven through downtown Bridgeport in years. The streets, once nostalgic, now looked alien in the early morning fog. Buildings ghosted by gentrification, local cafes swallowed by franchises. Yet the Robbins Gallery still stood, weathered but proud, a forgotten monument to her mother's former life. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel as she parked behind the building. The back alley was overgrown, scattered with broken glass and rain-slicked trash bins. But Studio B wasn't accessed through the front like the rest of the gallery. No, Margaret had always insisted it stay separate, unseen, and sacred. Claire stepped out of the car, her boots crunching on gravel. The key was warm in her pocket, as if it had a pulse of its own. She found the old side door, its brass handle dulled with age. Her breath caught when the key slid in perfectly and clicked with a hollow echo. The air inside smelled of linseed oil, dust, and memory. Studio B was untouched. Paintings leaned against the walls under sheets. Canvases stacked like forgotten dreams. In the center of the room, under a stained glass skylight, stood a single wooden chest. Claire approached it slowly. Her hands shook as she undid the latch. Inside, wrapped in black velvet, were dozens of journals, envelopes, and a single USB drive. On top, a note in Margaret's handwriting. For the day the truth matters more than silence. Claire spent hours in that studio, the rain growing heavier as the afternoon unfolded. Page by page, she unraveled her mother's secrets. Private thoughts, regrets, fears. But one journal stopped her cold. It was dated from the year her father remarried. "I've made a grave mistake. Vanessa doesn't know the truth, and I swore I'd never tell her. But how long can I protect a lie that never belonged to me? Claire deserves everything. Not because she's kind, but because she is mine. Entirely mine." Claire sat frozen, heart hammering. Vanessa is not. She read the line 10 more times. Her brain refused to process it, not fully, not yet. Margaret's entries shifted tone after that, filled with tension, legal notes, financial transfers. Mentions of Lorraine, her father's second wife, who had been closer to the truth than she should be. There were mentions of hush money, of buying peace, of DNA tests hidden in the safe deposit box. Claire looked down at her hands. Vanessa wasn't even Margaret's biological daughter. No wonder the locket was never meant for her. No wonder the will was written with razor-sharp precision. Claire had always wondered why her mother had kept her distance from Vanessa, despite the family front. Now it made sense. But if this was true, what else was buried? The next day, Claire visited the bank where her mother once kept a private safe deposit box. She brought the USB and the notarized letter she found in the chest. Thankfully, it granted her permission as executor of Trust B. Inside the narrow vault, Claire found more than she bargained for: birth certificates. 2. One for Claire, with Margaret's signature, and one for Vanessa, listing Lorraine as the mother. Claire gasped. And the USB? It was filled with voice recordings. Margaret's voice, weary but firm. If this falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy what little peace remains. But if Vanessa ever tries to take what's not hers, Claire, you'll need the truth. I loved you. I fought for you. This is your story to finish now. Claire stepped out into the parking lot, cold air burning her lungs. She didn't cry. Not yet. But she realized something in that moment. Vanessa had spent her life clawing for recognition, resenting Claire, undermining her, stealing credit and affection. And all this time, she was the outsider, the pretender. Claire had been the one denied, and now she held the truth. But she wouldn't use it just yet. Not in anger. She'd wait. Watch. And when Vanessa made her next move, whether flaunting the lake house, trying to access the art collection, or waving that damn necklace in front of someone else's camera, Claire would be ready. And when the reveal came, it would be public, humiliating, and permanent. Because some betrayals deserve more than silence. They deserve the kind of revenge that rewrites the family name. The invitation came via text message from Vanessa. Family brunch at the lake house, this Sunday, 11 a.m., dress nice, bring wine. Claire stared at the screen. She could practically hear her sister's voice behind the words, sweetened with a thin veneer of charm, concealing the barbs underneath. It wasn't a brunch. It was a performance. Vanessa had barely finished moving into the lake house estate, and already she wanted to parade it. Claire imagined her sister flitting through the rooms like a crowned queen, showing off polished hardwood floors and oceanfront views to their father, Lorraine, and a rotating cast of distant cousins who worshipped Instagram more than family ties. Claire wasn't sure why she said yes. Maybe because it was time. Sunday arrived cloaked in a cool fog that curled like breath around the car's windows as Claire pulled up to the estate. The lake house, a sprawling, gray-shingled property that overlooked Narragansett Bay, stood like a lighthouse over the water. Beautiful, detached, and cold. Claire stepped out, gripping a bottle of red wine like armor. She wore black slacks, a cream blouse, and the lightest trace of makeup, elegant but understated. Let Vanessa have the spotlight. Claire had other plans. Inside, laughter echoed from the kitchen. She could hear Vanessa's voice, too loud, too bright. "Claire!" she sang out when she saw her. "You came." Claire forced a smile. "Of course. Wouldn't miss it." Vanessa air-kissed both cheeks like a politician. She looked radiant in a silk floral dress. And yes, she was still wearing the necklace. "Wine?" Claire offered, setting the bottle on the counter. Vanessa glanced at it. "Red?" She frowned. "You know Dad prefers white." Claire shrugged. "It's for me." The brunch was as insufferable as Claire predicted. Lorraine complimented the view 5 times. Their father mostly watched from behind his coffee mug, weary and detached. And Vanessa? Vanessa glided from room to room with a voice as sugary as frosting, giving tours and making sure everyone knew what Mom left her, She always loved this patio, she cooed, walking their guests outside. And look, her garden's still. Here. I'm going to turn it into a meditation space. She'd love that, right, Claire? Claire nodded. Sure. She always said you were so good at sitting still. A few polite chuckles followed. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but she recovered. They sat down at the long, sunlit brunch table. Claire placed her phone face down beside her mimosa. Family is everything, Vanessa said during her toast, raising her glass. Even when we disagree, we always come back together. That's what Mom wanted. Claire said nothing. But when everyone else took a sip, Claire quietly reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. She slid it under the table to their father. He looked at it, puzzled. Play that when you're alone, she said, softly. You'll understand. Then she turned to Vanessa and smiled. So tell us about the renovations. Planning to change much? Vanessa lit up. Oh, tons. I'm hiring a designer next week. I want the master suite expanded, and I'm getting rid of that ugly old wall in Mom's office. I mean, why keep it the same, right? Claire froze. Wait. The office? Yeah, studio space or whatever it was. I already cleared it out. Probably. Going to knock it down, honestly. Claire's voice dropped an octave. What do you mean, cleared it out? Vanessa shrugged. There were boxes and papers, old notebooks, Mom's stuff, some paintings. I tossed most of it. Claire's chest went cold. You tossed it? Vanessa blinked. What? It's not like they meant anything. It was junk. The table went quiet. Claire stood, slow and deliberate. I'm going to take a walk, she said, her voice tight. She stood by the shore, waves breaking in rhythm, wind biting at her cheeks. Behind her, the house buzzed with shallow conversation. But Claire didn't feel powerless anymore. Vanessa had just sealed her fate, and didn't even know it. Because in that flash drive now sitting in their father's palm was the truth. Margaret's voice, her fears, her confession. The missing birth certificate. The silence that protected Vanessa was already unraveling. But Claire wouldn't be the one to say it. She had planted the seed, and when it bloomed, it would bloom like wildfire. That night, back in her apartment, her phone buzzed again, from Dad. Claire, we need to talk. Tomorrow. She didn't reply. She poured herself a glass of the wine Vanessa had sneered at and stared out the window, the city lights flickering like old promises. Her phone buzzed once more. From Vanessa. What did you say to Dad? Claire smiled. To Vanessa. Just reminded him who Mom really loved. Claire arrived at her father's office just after noon. The building hadn't changed. Glass doors, quiet lobby, the receptionist who still remembered her name. But the man waiting for her inside wasn't the one who used to tuck her in after nightmares. Thomas Robbins sat behind a desk of polished oak, his tie undone, gray creeping through his temples. He looked like he hadn't slept. Claire shut the door softly behind her. Thank you for coming, he said, voice hoarse. Sit. She did. For a few long seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't tense. It was heavy, pregnant with the weight of something both of them had avoided for too long. I listened to the recordings, he said finally. Claire watched him, unmoving. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Jesus Christ, Claire. Why didn't she tell me? She tried, Claire said quietly. You stopped listening. He looked away. There was guilt in his eyes. Not just because of the secrets Margaret had recorded, but because deep down, part of him must have known. The years of coldness between Margaret and Vanessa, the sideways glances, the forced smiles at family dinners, the locked doors. She told me the necklace was for you, he said at last. Years ago, I thought she changed her mind. She never talked to me about any of this. Because you were with Lorraine by then, Claire said. And Lorraine was Vanessa's mother. Margaret was alone. He didn't argue. Is it true? He asked, almost in a whisper. About Vanessa? Claire nodded once. Lorraine was pregnant before you met her. Margaret agreed to raise Vanessa as yours. For the sake of the marriage. For peace. He shut his eyes. When he opened them, they were red. And the inheritance? Claire reached into her bag and slid a copy of the birth certificate across the table. Vanessa isn't her biological daughter. Mom made sure her will followed the truth, even if she never said it out loud. He stared at the document for a long time. Finally he exhaled, slow and hollow. I made mistakes, he said. So did she, Claire replied. But I'm not here to punish you, Dad. I'm here because Vanessa is about to rewrite everything Mom built. And we both know she'll burn it all down if no one stops her. He nodded slowly. So what do you want me to do? Back me up, Claire said. Publicly. At the gallery reopening. Support the will. Confirm her wishes. He looked down, then up again. You're reopening the gallery? Claire smiled for the first time that day. Studio B still has a story to tell. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa stared at her laptop screen in disbelief. The text message had come from one of her mother's old friends, an art dealer. I saw Margaret's paintings listed for exhibition. Studio B? Didn't you say you trashed those? Vanessa's stomach flipped. She frantically typed into Google. Robbins Legacy Collection. Opening showcase, The Hidden Journals of Margaret Robbins. Date, May 18th. Location, Robbins Gallery. Curator, Claire Robbins. No. She slammed. The lid shut and stood, pacing her kitchen in bare feet and a silk robe. How the hell? How did she get those paintings? She'd thrown those boxes out herself. Hadn't she? But now she couldn't be sure. She grabbed her phone, thumb trembling as she typed, to Claire. Where did you get Mom's stuff? The response came instantly, from Claire. Where it's always been. You just never looked deep enough. Vanessa hurled the phone across the counter. That night, she showed up at Lorraine's condo unannounced. I need to talk to you, she said, breathless, eyes wild. Lorraine blinked, surprised. It's almost midnight, Vanessa. Then start. Pouring wine, Lorraine poured. And as the silence stretched and the clock ticked, Vanessa finally asked the question she'd never dared ask before. Was Margaret really my mother? Lorraine's hand froze mid-pour. The wine overflowed. Lorraine set the wine bottle down, hard. Red liquid pooled across the countertop, but neither of them moved to stop it. Vanessa stared at her, throat dry, heart hammering. Just tell me the truth. Lorraine's eyes flickered, and in that one second, the woman who'd always been effortlessly poised, designer scarves, pearl earrings, empty reassurances, looked genuinely shaken. She sat down. Who told you? Lorraine asked quietly. Vanessa exhaled like a deflating balloon. Does it matter? Lorraine studied her daughter, her jaw clenched tight. You were never supposed to find out. Not like this. Vanessa's voice cracked. So it's true. Lorraine looked away. The room felt like it was closing in. Glass windows reflecting back fragments of a life that suddenly felt artificial. Vanessa stepped back from the counter, pressing a trembling hand to her mouth. Then who is she? She whispered. My real mother? Lorraine hesitated. She was someone I knew when I was very young. A dancer. Fragile, troubled. When she found out she was pregnant, she begged me to take you. She couldn't raise a child. Not then. I was already seeing your father by that point, and he thought it would be best to keep it quiet. Margaret agreed, reluctantly. Vanessa's knees gave out. She sat on the floor. All these years. You let me believe Margaret hated me for no reason. And now I find out she wasn't even my mother? She tried, Lorraine said, sitting beside her. She tried to love you. But it was never the same. You always felt it, didn't you? Vanessa nodded slowly, a tear sliding down her cheek. And Claire? She knew? She does now, Lorraine admitted. I assume Margaret told her somehow. Vanessa wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her voice hardened. Then that's why she's doing this. The gallery, the recordings, the art. She's exposing everything. Lorraine looked at her with weary eyes. Claire doesn't need to expose you, Vanessa. You've already done that yourself. The next morning, Vanessa didn't sleep. Instead, she drove. Out of the city, away from the lake. She didn't know where she was going until the gravel crunched beneath her tires, and the front of the Robbins Gallery loomed into view. It wasn't open yet, but Claire was there, inside, arranging displays, lighting candles, wiping glass frames that shimmered. With morning light, Vanessa didn't knock. She walked in like she still owned the place. Claire didn't look up. You found the invitation? Claire asked, calmly dusting a large canvas labeled Unsaid Things. Vanessa's voice was ice. You don't get to do this, not without talking to me. Claire finally turned, one brow raised. Do what, exactly? Open Mom's gallery? Share her art? Protect her name from being gutted by your taste for renovations and revenge? Vanessa stepped closer. You don't understand what this feels like. Oh, Claire said, low and sharp. I do. It feels like learning the woman who raised you didn't fully trust you, but still left behind a trail just in case you ever needed proof of her love. Vanessa flinched. Claire continued, quieter. It feels like finally understanding why she looked at you with guarded eyes, and why she saved her deepest self for the daughter who never asked for anything but time. The silence stretched between them like a fault line. You're not the villain, Vanessa, Claire said. You're just lost, and I've stopped waiting for you to find me. Vanessa looked away. Her eyes landed on one painting, a portrait. Margaret, holding a child. Claire, and in the corner, another figure, barely outlined, blurred, incomplete. Vanessa realized she'd seen that painting before. It used to hang in the back hall behind a coat rack. She'd never paid attention to it. Now she couldn't look away. She painted me, Vanessa said softly. She painted the space you occupied, Claire corrected, not the person you tried to be. For once, Vanessa didn't argue. She left, without another word. That night, Claire stood alone in the gallery. She placed the necklace, her mother's locket, on a velvet stand beneath a glass case. Beneath it, a small card read, "The Heart of Margaret Robbins, For the daughter who listened. The gallery would open in 2 days, and the guest list was filling fast. But Claire wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about legacy, blood, and the kind of inheritance no will could grant. The kind that lived in paint, paper, and silence finally broken. The morning of the gallery opening, Claire stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the locket. It shimmered against her skin, gold and weighty, no longer a symbol of loss, but of arrival. She wore all black, a tailored blazer, wide-legged trousers, and a silk blouse. Margaret's style, confident, composed, a quiet tribute to the woman who had raised her with stories, shadows, and strength. The Robbins Gallery had never looked more alive. Candles lined the walls. Margaret's unreleased work, hidden for years in Studio B, now stood under soft, golden lighting, each painting anchored by a letter, a journal entry, a caption in her own handwriting. Word had spread. By noon, the gallery was buzzing. Art critics, family friends, quiet donors who remembered Margaret's early exhibitions in Boston, former students, even city council members who'd long forgotten the Robbins name had RSVP'd last minute when they heard the Hidden Journals exhibit was reopening the gallery under Margaret's daughter. Claire stood near the main entrance, accepting hugs and soft condolences, nodding through polite admiration. And then the crowd shifted. A hush moved through the doorway like a ripple in still water. Vanessa had arrived. She wore a fitted ivory coat and red lipstick too sharp for the occasion. Her hair was slicked into a polished chignon. She held her head high, but her eyes scanned the room like she wasn't sure where to land. People noticed. Not just her presence, but the energy. Uneasy. Fragile. She walked past a portrait, Margaret's self-portrait, and flinched when she saw the adjacent piece titled Inheritance Denied. It showed 2 girls, one turned toward the light, the other toward a mirror with no reflection. Claire watched her from a distance. Vanessa approached the locket's display. Her expression flickered. She looked at the card beneath it. The heart of Margaret Robbins, for the daughter who listened. A tear broke loose before she could stop it. She wiped it away quickly, glanced around. People were beginning to whisper. A few feet away, Thomas Robbins stood with Lorraine, both dressed in respectful tones, both silent. Lorraine had aged 10 years in the last 2 weeks. Her face was pale, her presence tentative. Claire saw them, gave a polite nod to her father. But her eyes barely lingered on Lorraine. It was enough. She didn't owe her more. At exactly 1 p.m., Claire walked to the center of the gallery where a microphone had been set. She tapped it once. Silence fell. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, voice clear, steady. "My mother, Margaret Robbins, was a woman of few words, but of many truths. For years, some of those truths remained locked away. Unfinished paintings, private letters, reflections never spoken aloud. She kept them in Studio B, a place that even I didn't understand fully until recently." She looked up, sweeping the crowd. Her eyes briefly met Vanessa's. "This gallery is not just an exhibit," she continued. "It's a final conversation between a mother and her daughters, between art and silence, between what was taken and what is remembered." A soft murmur moved through the crowd. Some nodded, others teared up. Claire smiled gently. "My mother once said that legacy isn't what you leave in a bank account. It's what survives in rooms where your name isn't spoken. Today, we open one of those rooms. She stepped back. Applause filled the air. Warm, earnest. As the crowd began circulating again, Vanessa remained still. Lorraine approached her carefully. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice low. Vanessa didn't answer at first. Her hands trembled, slightly. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because you needed to see it." Vanessa shook her head, blinking hard. "Everyone here thinks she was perfect." Lorraine touched her shoulder. "No. They think she was real. There's a difference." Vanessa stared at her for a long moment, then turned. She walked toward Claire, who stood by a painting titled "Forgiveness Not Promised." Their eyes met. "You've made your point," Vanessa said softly. Claire tilted her head. "It's not about a point. It's about the truth." "Then what happens now?" Vanessa asked. Claire stepped closer. "That depends on you." Vanessa's breath caught. "What if I told everyone the will was unfair? That she manipulated it? That she left you everything because she was bitter?" Claire didn't flinch. "Then you'd be lying, and I wouldn't stop you. Because the more you speak, the more you reveal what she knew all along." Vanessa's eyes flashed, but there was no threat left in her, only confusion and grief and the dawning sense that she'd already lost. Outside, the press snapped photos of the reopened Robbins Gallery, but inside, a much quieter shift had begun. The truth wasn't just revealed, it was displayed, and Vanessa for once couldn't look away. That night, after the gallery had closed and the last polite handshake faded into silence, Claire remained behind. She walked the dimly lit rooms barefoot, letting the soft hum of the building settle around her. The paintings seemed to watch her, now not haunting, but aware, as if they understood their final witness had arrived. She stopped in front of one of the lesser-known works, small, framed in weathered wood, hung slightly off to the side near the back hallway. Unopened. It was a muted watercolor, a bedroom window left ajar, wind curling the edge of a letter on the desk, its envelope yellowed and sealed with red wax. Claire had walked past it all week without pausing. But tonight, she stared. Something was different. She reached out. The frame was looser than the others, slightly ajar at the back. Curious, Claire unhooked it from the wall, turned it over, and gently opened the backing. Her breath caught. Taped behind the watercolor was a real letter, a sealed envelope, aged and delicate, with her name written on the front in her mother's unmistakable cursive. Claire. She sat down right there on the floor and opened it. "My darling girl, if you found this, then you're searching not just for answers, but for me. I knew you would be the one to look beyond the canvas, to see the cracks between the stories. I buried this here for you, because some truths are too fragile for the wrong ears. You've learned by now that Vanessa is not my biological daughter. That truth was heavy, not because of her, but because of what it did to us all. I tried to love her. I wanted to love her, but the lie built between us like glass, always reflecting something that wasn't real. And she felt it. I know she did. But here's what you don't know. The day she turned 18, she found a letter in my dresser. One I had written and never meant to send. It said I feared I would never truly see her as mine, She never spoke of it. But after that, something inside her hardened. So if you're wondering why she has always tried to take what was yours, it's not out of hate. It's out of emptiness. And if you are reading this now, then I have one final request. Don't destroy her. Don't become the woman who let pain define her. You are more than the daughter I raised. You are the woman I could never become. Finish what I started, but choose mercy when you can. Always, Mom. Claire held the letter to her chest. She didn't cry, not because she wasn't grieving, but because the ache had found shape now, a shape she could carry. She stood up slowly, placed the letter back in the envelope, and tucked it into her coat. She didn't know what she'd do with it yet, but she knew who needed to read it. Meanwhile, across the bay, Vanessa sat in the dark. Team. Only light came from her phone screen. A thread of new messages flashed from people who had attended the gallery opening. Incredible curation. Claire nailed it. I didn't know Margaret painted so personally. That piece about the Sao mirror gave me chills. I think it was about you. She didn't respond. She opened Instagram, scrolled through posts tagged at the gallery. Smiles, flowers, candids of Claire near the locket, a video clip of her speech. Warm, articulate, loved, and then a comment under it. Vanessa Robbins. Where were you? Eclair.Rob is the true heir, clearly. Bet she's fuming. And Vanessa threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. The next morning, Claire mailed the letter, not by email, not by message. She placed it in a cream envelope, addressed it by hand, and dropped it in, the post herself. No return address. No warning. She knew what would happen when Vanessa opened it. She might rip it up. She might deny it. But she'd read it. And for the first time in her life, Vanessa would understand what it felt like to be seen by the woman they had both been trying to reach. One through love, the other through conquest. That afternoon, Claire returned to the gallery and found a single envelope slipped under the door. No name. Inside, a torn photograph. Two little girls, Claire and Vanessa, laughing in a garden, barefoot, faces covered in cake and joy. On the back, scrawled in Vanessa's sharp, familiar hand, "We were real once. Even if it didn't last, do what you want with the rest. I'm leaving for a while." Claire stared at it for a long time, then tucked it behind the locket's display case, where no one could see. But she would know. 3 months later, the Robins. Gallery wasn't just open, it was alive. Margaret's final exhibit had been extended twice. Schools began organizing field trips. Art foundations sent letters asking to purchase prints, but Claire refused most of the offers. It wasn't about sales, it was about story. She had turned Studio B into a space for women artists who, like Margaret, had been silenced by family, fear, or expectation. The walls now displayed not only her mother's work, but also rotating installations from survivors, daughters, and creators who'd once believed their voice didn't belong in the frame. The exhibit was called Unclaimed: What We Leave Behind, Claire. Stood by the window one quiet morning, sunlight pouring across the hardwood floors. She traced the air with a paintbrush she hadn't touched in years. Behind her, a new canvas waited. It was blank, and it didn't scare her. A soft chime rang at the front. She turned. It was her father. He looked smaller somehow, the proud edges of his posture softened by humility. "Thought I'd find you here," he said. Claire smiled. "Where else would I be?" He walked slowly, studying the newest pieces. "You've made something sacred here." She nodded. That was the point. He paused by the locket's display. "I still remember the day." Margaret wore that to her first gallery opening. She said it reminded her who she was doing it for. Claire swallowed. She was always doing it for someone else. He looked at her, guilt in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Claire, for everything I didn't see, for not protecting what mattered most." "I'm not asking for apologies," she said softly. "I'm asking you not to forget again." He nodded, eyes wet. As he left, he slipped a folded card into her hand. It read only one line. "Blood isn't what makes us family. It's what we choose to remember." Vanessa never returned to the lake house. Claire later learned she'd gone to the coast of Maine. Rented a cottage, no Wi-Fi, no mirrors. Every few weeks a postcard arrived, no return address, always with a painting. On the front, sometimes a coastline, sometimes a bird. Once a sketch of two girls under a tree. The back never said much, only lines like, "Found some quiet here. Tried painting. It's harder than I thought. Tell her I'm still looking." Claire never replied, but she kept every card, tucked them behind the journals in Studio B, like a breadcrumb trail from a sister who had once been lost in the wrong story, but was now learning how to write her own. The necklace remained under glass. Not because Claire couldn't wear it, but because it belonged to something bigger now. It belonged to legacy, to truth spoken, even late, to the daughters who came after, wondering if they mattered, and to the mothers who tried, even when they failed.